everybody. Welcome to another Toy Guys Talking. Very happy to have on board Cameron Johnson from the Patreon tribe. Nerdmas Day, sir. Thank you very much for supporting the channel. And you have a band and also a huge Instagram page too, which I wanted to plug right off the bat. Boss Metal Project on Instagram. What kind of stuff do you do there?
Well, thank you. It's, being a fan of toys and all the stuff that you discuss generally, I'm also a fan. I'm a musician, so we have our own sort of stuff to collect, which is a whole other world. So there's a type of pedal called, if you don't know about guitars, we collect these little boxes called pedals, and each one has a specific sort of sound that you can make your guitar, you can alter your guitar through. And they're just like they're just as collectible as toys and more expensive for the most part. I mean, so you get, anyway, that's a whole other thing. But
do you have guys selling them on Kijiji or Craigslist, whatever you got there, saying mint condition, but it's yellow and it's old? Same problem.
Same. Hey, with condition and collectibles, the word mint it should be struck from the English language because it's so misused, as you know.
I think mint should only be used for mint, like mint, breath mints type of thing. Peppermint, that type of mint. And I agree with you. Yeah, I think it's about time to get rid of the word mint because it just, even a brand new thing, right off the production line, someone will find a scratch or something, a scuff mark, and it's not mint. So, yeah.
Right. I'd say mint and then also like new are both words that shouldn't be used.
Like new? Yeah.
Yeah. I could see, I think stores can use like new, but even their stuff, like you said, I mean, it's never going to be mint condition, like untouched.
Well, I just picked up a like new iMac for editing, and like new, but it smells like cigarettes too. So it's like new, but like cigarette, so we're trying to get the stink out of it right now.
Right.
But yeah, like new, another one. Jeez.
Is a slot. I think the condition scale is a little too, there's too much gray area. One person's mint condition is another person's poor condition. And I've seen, I'm sure you have seen the gamut of vernacular used incorrectly when it comes to condition.
Yeah, you get some. Do you ever get any surprises? Like, have you bought some stuff off of eBay, which is like it's kind of risky. A lot of people have a horrible opinion of eBay. They just say evil bay, and they strike it from any possible way of buying toys. You got to be careful, but like I've found by checking the feedback, you know what you're getting into. So if you've got a dude who's got lots of negative feedback and you read the comments and they say, look, this guy is a jerk, he's an idiot. I had a problem, I tried to resolve it, and he snapped at me. Zero coping skills. So that's one way to be careful, but I've usually been very thorough with the pictures. Like if it's a blurry picture, don't buy the thing, right? Like if it's not well lit, it's either the guy doesn't know what he's doing or he's hiding something. But I've had some things where I would buy a thing and the paint looked great and everything looked great and it was like new, and then smells like cigarettes.
I have a funny story for you. That is the worst when it comes to buying stuff. I can usually deal with, within reason, with imperfections that I kind of, allow for that bit of air to come through, unless it's explicitly supposed to be new. But the thing I can't deal with are smells.
Yeah.
So I recently bought a guitar. Of course, I ended up reselling it with detailing the situation, but I got it and it smelled like it had been in a basement, like a really musty, smoky basement for probably 20 years.
Without a dehumidifier running?
Well, what I did was I put it outside, and what it turned out is the case of the guitar probably absorbed the most smell, and the guitar had been sitting in the case. So it was kind of like this constant, the guitar was making the case smell bad, and then, it just never went away. It
was a symbiotic relationship.
Right. It was like for Seinfeld, that episode, if you remember, with the
still smells.
Yeah, exactly. The beast.
Yeah.
So I had my own mini version of that. So I took it outside and I put the case outside, Febrezed it, which probably made it worse because now it smells like must and Febreze. But I
Well,
ended up selling it, and it
oh,
all in the end because I'm just really sensitive to smell. Though, if something smells bad, I'm the first person to be like, get it away from me.
yeah, me too. And my wife especially, she is like full blown allergic to cigarette smell. It doesn't have a pleasant effect on me either, but this new iMac we were using, she was using it to cut one of the Star Trek videos. And we didn't notice it when we bought it. I mean, when we got it from the person, there was like a faint cigarette smell, but it smelled like, oh, these are people who open the window when they have an occasional smoke. It wasn't like, oh, it didn't hit you. You smell
Right.
the computer when you get home, and you're like, faint smell, and do a little bit of wipes, baby wipes on it, and yeah, that's better. You don't find out that the smell is in the machine until you're encoding, when the machine is really working hard, and then it's like and the whole room just stunk like cigarettes, and she got a major headache from it.
Oh wow.
So like we're running it actually outside. We put it on our porch, so we're like hoping that that outside smell will help. And I just figured out how to open up one of those machines, so hit it with some compressed air. My thinking is, and I found this to take it back to toys, because when I asked you about this, you said, well, I'm not sure if I've got a lot of toy stuff to talk about, or the trivia and the facts and all that. And I'm like, dude, like the great thing about Toy Guys Talking is we kind of weave in and out and kind of touch on toys and go on a tangent. So talking about smells, I'm sure a lot of toy collectors and collectors of anything will appreciate that discussion. But I'm of the mind that a smell that wasn't originally part of the thing just can't be infinite. Like it just, okay, a basement smell might be different. That might be something living, like a mold or a fungus or something.
Right.
But if you get a smelly toy, and whether it's like cat urine or cigarettes or something, and I've had some toys which showed up and they're like, oh, the smell, like mint condition, but a cat pissed on it. And you wash it and you air it out outside, and it gets pretty good, but it still stinks. I'm thinking it can't last forever. Like no smell is infinite. It's not magic. And I gotta say, like anything I have in my collection that stunk doesn't smell anymore. Even if I just stuck it on a shelf and went, what can you do? Don't get too close. Like Stinkor, right?
Right.
I'm like, most of the stuff has eventually gone away. So like for a smelly guitar, wouldn't it eventually, like it might take a long time, but
Well,
sitting out on the porch maybe?
I have another story for you, and this will illustrate the amount of time it might take. So, when I was in college, I had a pretty brand new guitar that I was really excited about. I saved up for, spent a bunch of money on, and there was an exchange student who came in and was a really good guitarist, like way better than any of us. Really good. He was, I guess, spending maybe the semester a year at our college, and he came into my room. He was kind of known for having that sort of BO smell, and I just kind of chalked it up to different sort of traditions and different sort of standards of
Hygiene.
whatever.
Yeah.
Hygiene. There you go. Hygiene traditions.
Low
So
gene.
anyway,
Some people have low gene.
yes, he definitely had more of a low gene going on, and I think it was probably summertime. It was maybe at the beginning of the year. He ended up, of course, he wanted to play the guitar, and I reluctantly said, "Oh, sure, that's fine." He may not have been wearing anything but a T-shirt, but after he played the guitar, it smelled like, no joke, his BO was on there and it was on there. I could, whenever I got the guitar out to play it, all I did was smell that, so I kind of shunned the guitar, which was unfortunate. I'd just gotten it. And I kind of, when it comes to those sort of things like that, I kind of get obsessed about it. So I go and I just wait 10 minutes and smell it and see if it still smelled. Of course, it still smelled, but I was the Jerry in this situation. So I tried everything, looked it up online. What can I do? And then eventually
Burn it.
Yeah,
Kill it with fire.
right. What I ended up doing is I got it out of the case, because that was sort of, like I said, it was like the case and the guitar both had the smell on it, and they kept touching each other. So it took literally about 2 years with them separate, no joke, and finally it was gone. So
Really? Wow. 2
It was
years.
it was literally about 2 years, So I think maybe because the finish was relatively new, it may have gotten might have still been not completely hardened, if that makes
Oh,
sense.
it cured. Like it.
But kind
Oh,
of
that's awful.
maybe it kind of got cured in there. I don't
Oh,
know.
it cooked. It baked in VO.
Yes,
Do you remember Stinkor from the Masters of the Universe?
I do. I do remember Stinkor, and it was the patchouli oil, right? Patchouli, I think is
Yeah.
what.
What do you think about making a toy that intentionally stinks like a skunk, like is intentionally repulsive?
Well, I think that's a very kind of 80s and 90s thing to do. You remember those markers that had the smell?
Oh yeah. Those
Yeah,
were like fruits then and candies though, weren't they? Or
but
did they?
I think the black one was licorice, and that
Right.
as a kid I was like, oh, this is smells kind of weird. And then those stickers too. They made those scratch and sniff stickers.
Right. Fart smell and yeah, yeah. And I think we still have Toys R Us here in Canada, and on the aisles there are some. They don't stink, but they're ugly and gross looking, like different monster toys and gross things. So that a garbage pail kid thing is still around. Like there'll always be kids who want something yucky or gross or something like that. But it's interesting. Stinkor is, I think, one of the rare ones that stunk. Like people will get things that look gross, but not what smells gross because like I'm just like you with that constant checking. With this computer running, I'm like, please, I hope I get the smell out. Like I'm checking it every couple hours. And I know like some people say 72 hours running constantly. I'm like, okay, but maybe now. And I'm smelling it like, is it a little less? It smells a little less now, I think. But I mean, that's what happens when you are, kind of in the creative arts type of thing, you with music and me, I was a visual arts guy in school and that totally carries over into working on a computer and doing video editing and stuff. It's all about being meticulous. You don't get to have the polished final product that you have unless you're meticulous. And a lot of people don't realize like the hundreds or the thousands of times you go over something in order to hone it and fine tune it. I mean, there's that expression obsessive compulsive disorder. You have no idea until you've seen a musician like master a song or an artist paint. I guess with painting, it's more as you go and you can't go back and edit, but especially something that gives you the freedom of editing, going back, changing things. Writers, same deal, right? You want to talk about obsessiveness in order to gain something of high quality, then look no further than an artistic mind.
Right. And then the unfortunate part about it is it's almost like the process is the most satisfying thing,
It is.
like which is, I mean, I guess you can, equate that with toy hunting. To me, the hunt is the most satisfying thing. It's
Me too.
almost like the anticipation, like when I first walk into a store and I first see, or walk into a convention or something and see the toys, like that first feeling is the most exciting for me. Then you kind of get down to business.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's I guess they say the journey, whatever. The end result is kind of just it's more of like almost like a signpost or a moment in time. Whereas the experience, the hours you put in are the most satisfying and rewarding thing, and that's why for creative people, the work is never done. There's always things to improve upon, and there's no real end point. You can kind of set little goals, but the end point is always the goalpost is always moving.
Yeah, if you're always creating, then you savor like the finished thing, but you don't sit and just rest on your laurels. I've never been like that with anything that I've created, especially not any video. I mean, I can work forever on a video and then I'm very happy with it when I'm done, but on to the next thing. I can't sit for a month and go, like, because in a
Right.
month, no one's going to care. Like, hey, guys, I worked hard on this, and like, you must have the same feeling like when you finish a song, how long until you're already moving on to the next song?
Right. I mean, yeah, it's well for the I guess the music process. Typically, when I write songs, I'll demo them out first. So there's the sort of first step where you kind of get your ideas out, which is a really important thing to not kind of get bogged down too much in the process because in inspiration can be very fleeting, and then you can forget things really quick and get off track. So I typically will do a demo of a song first. And I'll typically demo, say, if I'm working on an album with my band, we'll demo the whole album out first. So before we even record it for real, we've recorded it at least once through, made a whole bunch of changes. And then we go into the studio and say, okay, we got our parts down. Let's do this for real. So typically you do it twice, and then by the time it gets mixed and mastered and finished, you're so sick of it, you don't want to ever listen to it again.
Yes.
Although it's it's kind of like, I don't typically mix my own stuff. So it's kind of as if you filmed your video and got sort of the shots you want and had like a storyboard, and you send it off to an editor, and then they give you the first thing back. That's at least for me, when I get the first mix back, that's probably the best feeling, is because you've kind of done all you can. You sent your work off and have someone with a different perspective, they're not bogged down by all your process, and then they put it together. They put your ideas with it, and then of course you're gonna have different revisions. But once that album is totally finished, I'll spend about a week listening to it, really excited. After that week, I'm so sick of it, and I typically don't listen to it for another year. And every year or so, I'll kind of, oh, okay, that was cool, that sounded good. Oh, I like that song a lot. And then you see things you don't necessarily see at first, and you have a different perspective. But then it's on to the next thing, you know. So
you're like me, where you take a break like a year or two, and then you listen to some of your own stuff, and you go, I did that? Wow. I have no memory, and it's almost like you're listening to someone else's work, and you can appreciate it as a fan, not as like an ego, I'm great. Like it's just a total disconnectedness to it.
Yeah, I absolutely do that. It's a feeling that's really interesting, and for better or for worse, I may think, oh wow, this is actually really good, a lot better than I thought, or wow, I wish I could have done many things different.
Well, you got some Star Wars stuff in behind you there. When is it done? Like, when do you have to stop tweaking it? Because I bring up the Star Wars because Uncle George, right? It's never done. It's never done. 30 years later, it's never done. Keep tweaking it. But for you, like, is it done like within a month or a couple months? How do you feel about going back after a year or a couple of years and doing tweaks?
Well, I guess for really anything, you kind of have to, so as far as music is concerned, pardon me, once it's mixed and mastered, you kind of have to just let it go and let it kind of exist and be its own thing. Maybe down the road, if there's some major things, like a major issue with the sound that I didn't notice before, it's worth tweaking. But beyond that, as far as the songs are concerned,
or if a band member is a jerk and you fired him, you want to cut him out, cut the bass out, cut the drums out.
Well, I think, what I think as I get older, I sort of accept, you look back at past experiences and past situations with a whole different perspective. So even if there might have been conflict, I've had situations where I've been, I've had panic attacks while actually working on editing. If I have a deadline, I have to get it to the mixer by this day. I'll work, I have time. I'll work, all my free time to get it to where it is. And I was miserable.
Yeah.
And it's kind of funny when I look back on it, I'll kind of have that feeling, oh, wow, that was a really difficult thing. But I'm never like, it's never tainted, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. I've never had any real deadlines, because anything I've ever worked on, I never had a corporation cracking the whip, and that's why I don't think I could ever do that. Like manufactured, contrived, genuine fun, genuine manufactured heart and soul. And the corporations do it all the time. They hire people who have a lot of passion and have a lot of heart and soul, and they sign a big check and they say, do that for us. And bless their hearts, they try their best, but you got a deadline. And you got people like J.J. Abrams going, look, you want this heart and soul. You want something that people will not just like, but fall in love with. and I have to do it by Christmas. We don't, or whatever the deadline may be. It doesn't work like that. So luckily, sometimes the studios acquiesce, but usually they don't. They say, no, this is a business. And then that's where that like anxiety comes in, because it's not lining up. Like, you're supposed to be pouring your heart and soul into it, but you're not. Like, this is totally not a heart and soul type of thing. So that's why I've kind of stayed away from being a hired gun, having my passion and my heart and soul for hire. The YouTube thing has been awesome because the only deadlines are self-imposed, and those can be hard sometimes because I want to get it done by this day. You have to have somewhat of a schedule. Otherwise you just kind of flounder and float and never accomplish anything, which is good. It's good to be chill, but you don't want to get to the point where you sit and you go, what did I do with my life? So,
Right.
It's nice. The only experiences I've had that were tainted were because of the people I was collaborating with, who, I'm talking like the donut hole in terms of dedication and passion and interest, where, me and other people, that's what would kill me the most, is not just me, but other people cared so much and gave so much and sacrificed so much. And then you got the term I've heard used is the weak sister. I don't know where that came from, but you got the one guy or gal who's just like, can't make it. Like, okay, don't even need to ask. It must be a good reason. Yeah, I'm going to see a movie that night. I'm like,
Yeah, it's like the group projects. You always hated group projects in high school and college because there'd always be that one person that wouldn't contribute anything, and then we'd all have to, either one person would take up the slack or we'd all collectively do it.
yeah,
And they still get credit for it because it's not, it's a group project. You're all turning it in as a group. That's interesting you bring that up though. Whenever I've had situations like that in bands, I've always been kind of, almost happy to pick up the slack because it just allows me more creativity. It's like, oh, you're not going to do a good job on this part. Well, I'll do it for you, and I'll get to put my spin on it.
yeah.
So, but that's just me, and it's not necessarily the healthiest attitude, I think, because I've overworked myself when it comes to that, and I'm probably a little too overbearing on certain, in the past on band members, wanting them to achieve something that we may not have the same level of dedication, like you mentioned, or level of dedication or, interest in, especially with music when we're talking about, like bands, we're not making any money, honestly, especially the genres that I'm involved in, we're just doing it for fun. It's very difficult to make it your job, to actually play music for a living is a rare feat, from where I can see.
But you have to do it too, and it's the same reason why people collect toys, and you do it for fun, but you also do it to live. If you stopped, and I'm sure there's been times where you have stopped, where you're like, I need a break, or I can't take this anymore, and there's just a giant hole, right? There's something missing, and that's the thing about creativity. I think we're all creative creatures. When they say, and not to get, don't worry, everyone out there. I'm not getting religious here, but the age-old line of "we are created in God's image." I think what they meant by that is not 2 arms and 2 legs and a head and all the. I think what they meant is the image is a creator. And if we are created by a creator, then we should be creating. And
Right.
when you don't create, something doesn't feel right. Something's off. There's stress, anxiety, depression. There's all sorts of these problems because you can't just sit and consume. You can't just sit on a couch and watch other people's movies and shows and listen to their music and just watch. We're not spectators. It kills me that there are stadiums filled with thousands, tens of thousands of people watching a dozen people. And it just goes on and on and on for centuries. You got all these spectators watching, like a handful of, I guess athletes are creative in their own way, and musicians and theater and all that stuff. If those people would just try, I guess maybe they set their sights too high. They think I need to be just as big and famous as the person I'm watching. And that's not the case. I mean, you can just be a toy customizer. You can, fix and repaint toys, and that's a creative outlet. You can play piano horribly like I do, it's still something. For
Right.
5 minutes, it's still a little thing, and it's all these little things I think that make a huge difference in our moods and our attitudes every day.
Yeah, I think thinking about the times where I haven't been creative or where I felt like I was sort of stifled or didn't have motivation were always the worst times in my life. The times when I've been productive, when I've worked really hard at anything, it could be any job, are the times where I'm the most creative. I think being productive, creative, is like such a great way to just be happy. I can't think of any other easy way to be happy than to be productive. Even if it's like cleaning up the house or straightening up or anything, I've never felt like down after doing that.
Yeah.
Like being productive is just such a natural kind of I don't know, way just to lift your mood and just to stay mentally healthy. When you're always doing something towards the end goal, and it's just I think the easiest way to just to stay happy.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm reminded by the last Real Talk I did, which was one of your requests. So thanks for that.
Oh, yeah.
And I had to head down to Grand River for that one because I need to go outside for those types of ideas. I've tried in the past just to sit in a little corner in the basement and find a quiet corner and talk about that. It just doesn't come to me. I find with a lot of the things that I've written, poetry, any writings like that, you got to be in the right atmosphere. When I wrote up I hate calling them scripts because it makes it sound so contrived, but when I wrote up my tale of the history of Transformers 1985, I did that in a mall, like a food court mall. And I just felt like, wow, the energy here is amazing. So much better than sitting in a room all by myself and typing on a keyboard and doing my research. I think it brought a lot of life to the thing. So that's why I like doing those types of videos talking about just common sense. I mean, it's not these ideas that I've come up with. It's just common sense, going down to Grand River. And when people, ask, what should I do? I feel awful. Go outside. I mean, you don't have to clean your house top to bottom to feel a sense of accomplishment. Because like if a person is struggling with some really serious depression, they can't get out of bed. Like they just, as unfathomable, nailed it, as this might sound to people who have no problem. Some people can't imagine life, what life is like for someone not themselves. There are people who can't get out of bed. They don't have the strength. And going outside and sitting in the sunlight in a lawn chair is a huge accomplishment for a person who doesn't want to get out of bed, who just wants to curl up and shut their eyes and not do anything. So like one of the most basic pieces of advice when I'm asked for it is get yourself in the sunlight. Just feel that warmth, because if you're like in a dark, cold place, let that sun warm you up, and that'll be kind of, I like to call it a cosmic slap upside the head. Hey, it's not all dark and cold wherever you go. You literally just have to get out, and it's a slap upside the head because it's like, get out of the house. What are you doing? Why are you being in cold, dark places? Yes, that'll lead you to cold, dark mindset. Get out into the sun. And I don't want to give any advice to people with some like serious depression, because I'm not a doctor, I'm not trained or anything, and I don't want to get in trouble if someone were to take this and go, my son killed himself because he took your bad advice or something like that. So, but like I'm thinking, if someone is in like such a horrible, deep dark place, like go get a sunburn, because like again, it's warm, it's sunny, and it's kind of a reminder of that warmth and that sun. And I've found that like with any aches and pains I have a constant shoulder ache, but if I get an ache somewhere else, like my elbow starts to hurt, it takes my mind off of the other thing that's been bugging me for 10, 12 years. So maybe if you get a sunburn, it'll take your mind off of the BS that has pulled you down so far. I don't know. What do you think? Sunburn as your solution to major issues?
Well, I think yeah, you're onto something. I think whenever I've had issues in the past, where I've had like I guess it's not PTSD technically, but it's like the one removed from there where it's really just the like a temporary sort of state after a traumatic event. But what's amazing is with that is a lot of that is when your mind has it could be your subconscious has too much time like and free reign to just kind of scheme and kind of
Scheme is a good word.
yeah, that's kind of what it is. It's like it's scheming to make you feel bad or to to put you in these states of mind. I think is if the more you can occupy your mind, the better. Even no matter if it's doing a word search, anything. We're collecting toys,
Yeah.
music. It's amazing. It's just how healthy just occupying yourself is, and it's something my dad is a retired gastroenterologist, and I obviously didn't go down the medical path.
Hey,
But
better late than never.
well,
There's always time.
yeah, we'll see. I'll be ready to retire by the time I graduate. But
Yeah. Dr. Cameron
he,
Johnson, 97 years old.
right. It's funny, he says things. I rely on him for advice because he'll break things down to the most sort of simplest terms and the most obvious answers. Maybe not the most eloquently said, but if I'm like, man, I'm having these issues, and he's just like, well, you just need to, if I was in between jobs, you just need to get a job. Like, well, you're not taking into account my feelings. But then it's like, oh, you're right, because if I'm working constantly or I'm working on something, I don't have time to really get into those weird states of mind where my mind's racing or whatever. So, I think, I guess this whole conversation, or this portion, you can kind of boil it down to if you stay productive and you stay busy, you're going to be a much happier person.
Absolutely. 100% agree. And like I've gone through the same situation twice. And the first time I got hurt at work, I sat at home and I waited for justice. So I don't want to get into the details of that. It's just all silliness, but it took 4 years to get back to work for, people to do what they were legally required to do. And during that time, I didn't do much. And it was a very, very difficult time because, just kind of got in the mindset of there isn't much I can do anymore. And I'm waiting and I'm waiting. And you can't wait on justice. There is none. You can't wait on other people. If you want something done right, you got to do it yourself. So now the history is kind of repeated in my situation. And I don't touch on it much on my channel because it's not worth talking about. Quite honestly, it's not like I'm bashful or shy about it. It's just all a bunch of silliness. But when that kind of repeated, I decided get creative, and that's what I started to do. Not just with the toy stuff, but other writings, poetry writings, and just creative things. Even yoga can be a type of creative thing in addition to being physiotherapy for the body. It's also, kind of like Tai Chi. It's an art. It's the art of the body. So that's made a huge difference. It's interesting to be in a position where I can compare, the last time to this time. And I wish I could open up a time portal and go, hey, idiot, do something. And that younger version of me would be like, do what? And be overthinking things. But it reminds me of, I always bring up Way of the Peaceful Warrior, the story about the big Gordian knot in the desert and all these wise men hummed and hawed. And how do we cut the Gordian knot? How do we do it? Alexander the Great. That's how you cut it. And one of the lessons in that book is use the sword. Whenever you're dealing with all of those, things that stress you out, that make you unhappy, use the sword. And it makes no sense to most people. They're like, I don't get it. How can you just dispatch of these thoughts that easily? That's how they are dispatched, because they are worthless. They are without value. And that's how they are dispatched. They're not worth any more than that. And people build them up and they go, but it must be a huge struggle and it has to take a lot out of you. No, they're worthless. They don't do you any good. And I love that mindset of take out the trash is another line from that book too. Take out the trash. Just get rid of it.
Yeah, that is. Yeah, that's a great. It's not to get too deep down into mental stuff, but it is it's amazing when you start to learn tools like that to help get yourself past situations or mindsets. It's amazing what you can do. Just with your own. It's kind of like you're taking your mind and I'm not saying this very eloquently, but you're using tools to kind of conquer issues in your own mind, which is
Yeah.
sort of such a
Con-
weird thing.
Conquer thyself. Yeah.
Right.
I like talking about that stuff. I mean, I don't want to sit here and talk for an hour about why was Luke Skywalker or was it Obi-Wan Kenobi's lightsaber yellow in the vintage collection, the original. I don't want to do that. Like that interests some people. It doesn't interest me. But yeah, conquer thyself instead of trying to conquer other people. You got people who are always trying to bully other people and put them down and whatnot, and it's just like if they spent that much time trying to conquer themselves, they wouldn't have self-loathing. I mean, the truth that I've seen of most people who behave like that, they just have self-loathing. They hate themselves, and they hate themselves because they treat other people like crap. And another just simple truth of life, not my opinion, it's just a simple truth. Might sound very pompous that, well, this guy states this as truth, not an opinion, but it's the truth. You treat other people like crap, you're going to feel like crap because you're supposed to be treating those people good because you're here to help them. Period. Simple. You're supposed to help other people, not treat them like crap. When you do, you got this thing, unless you're a psychopath, you got this built-in thing that makes you moron. You're not supposed to be doing that. And that's why people are miserable. And they might laugh and ha 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 and act like jackasses when they, are jerks to other people. But, and I've said this to a lot of people, in those situations where, like, especially road rage, good Lord, when people get behind the wheel and they're like, moron, idiot, and they'll say everything. But I've had talks with people and I go, you're really loud and you're really tough and you're really imposing and intimidating, and you're going to walk away from this feeling great, like you won something. And tonight, when you're brushing your teeth and you're looking in the mirror and no one's there, I won't be there, no one's there, you're going to feel like crap because you're going to know when it's quiet, the truth is going to set in that you didn't follow the truth of life. And that actually has worked really well a lot of time where people like they drop that whole swagger and they're like, screw you. They can't process it in the moment, and I understand they can't. So all you can do is plant a seed. Plant a seed. I used to say plant a seed and walk away. Now I say plant a seed and run like hell. Get the hell away from those people. Get away from them.
Right. And that's one of those things you learn, as you get older. I mean, there are good things and bad things about getting older, of course. The aches and pains, the memory, the things aren't quite what they used to be, but the life lessons you learn and the perspective you gain, it's just it makes life a lot more, I guess, a lot more livable, if that makes sense. You really can see, you start to think of other people's situations more and start to be more considerate and really think about things in a more, I feel like as you get older, you're constantly distancing yourself from yourself. And then you start to just look at everything as in a bigger kind of context. You're less of, Michael or Cameron, like, what do I need to gain out of this? And it's more like, well, how does everybody else benefit, and
yeah. I call it ego versus empathy. So when you're younger, it's all about ego, and it's what we're trained because, like babies, children, they get all the attention showered on top of them. They're amazing. They're incredible. They're the cutest thing ever. And that's awesome. But then what happens to a teenager? Why do you think teenage angst happens? Because all the attention dissipates. You're not as cute anymore. You're not as adorable. The world doesn't revolve around you anymore. People find a different interest, and that's crushing for an ego. Like, hey, what did I do? You didn't do anything. You just got a little older, and then wait till you get even more older. Wait till you're in your 30s, your 40s, your 80s. It's just a constant process of being forgotten and having your ego crushed and crushed and crushed until it's disintegrated, and then you don't have ego anymore, unless you're a psychopath. And you have empathy, and you start to be able to walk a mile in other people's shoes. To take it back to toy collecting for a second, I think the people who can't appreciate getting older are the nitpickers. If you know anything about the toy collecting community, there are some people who can't appreciate anything because their whole mindset is, but it's imperfect. And if it's imperfect, it's no good. So, I can totally see why there are miserable people who are, miserable because they're getting older and they don't appreciate any of the benefits of getting older, like a cool gray in your whiskers, or like gray hair is free highlights, in my opinion. That's awesome.
Oh, yeah.
I can't wait to go gray or bald, less hair to shampoo.
Right. You cut your hair, I noticed, didn't you? You got rid of it, right?
Actually, like months and months ago, sometime last year. I guess it just never got noticed because I usually wear hats, So,
Right.
but yeah, I've had long hair for most of my life, and then I'll chop it all off and then grow it all back because it's just interesting, right? And I'm cheap, so I like to save on haircuts too.
Yeah, we're similar. I used to do that all the time, but then for the last about 10 years, I've just left it long. And actually, speaking of being cheap, I didn't cut it for about 5 years, and it just stopped growing.
Really?
It kind of reaches a point. Yeah, there's a point, I think, everybody where hair just doesn't grow anymore.
Oh,
It just has a natural length. And then eventually I got a haircut, and then I've sort of just got a haircut like maybe once or twice a year, about twice a year. Because now I enjoy the haircut, where I used to hate going to get haircuts.
interesting. Well, my hair kind of grows like a weed. A lot of people have said, "Wow, your hair grows fast," because they'll see me like with a drastic haircut, like a buzz cut, and then 2 weeks later they're like, "Holy crap, you can almost tie that back," which not to that extreme, but like it seems to go pretty fast. So I've never let it just keep going. Years ago, I did let it keep going because I donated it to. We have a charity in Canada called Angel Hair for Kids, which is like Locks of Love. And that's the longest it's ever been in my whole life, where it was like down to the middle of my back. It was almost about as long as yours, I think. There maybe about as long, but it kept going. So I had to get rid of it by that point because it was like neck strain. Like, oh my god, this hair is really weighing me down.
It gets caught under the armpit sometimes, or you're laying down or trying to read, and then but I think it's so funny, if I cut my hair now, it's kind of like Samson. I would probably freak out. Like I've had nightmares after I've cut my hair, like, and I'd still, in my dream, I'd have long hair still. Then I'd wake up like, oh my gosh, what did I just do? So I'm hedging my bets until I go bald, or until hopefully, I guess genetics will tell me when that's going to happen. But I'm just going to keep it probably long, for now.
When you do, if you ever chop it all off, consider donating it. Nailed it. I'm on a roll today to Locks of Love or a similar charity like that. I mean, it doesn't matter what you look like, really. Like, do what makes you feel good, which is why I used to have long hair, and when I didn't feel like it. But cutting my hair off for that charity really changed my mindset when it came to haircuts, because I used to be like that too. Like, don't screw my hair up to the hairdresser, and I'd get bad haircut after bad haircut. There's another reason why I would keep it long. Just sick of bad haircuts because my hair's so thick you can't style it, so tie it back. But when I donated it, we did a segment on a local TV show here, and the host was saying, "But your hair's so beautiful, oh no," and they were chopping it off, and she's like, "How can you be so calm?" And I just said, because it's not my hair. Like, I made up the decision a year ago. I've been carrying some other, I guess a bunch of kids, they can make a few wigs out of it, their hair. I've been carrying it for a year and washing it for them, but it's not mine. So like, yeah, normally that's like, oh my God, what are you doing? But that to me was like, great, they can get their hair now. Deal's a deal. That's what I said I was going to do a year ago. And I still think that was the best haircut of my life. It looked like a hatchet job, and everyone went, oh my God, oh no. The hairstylist, Kim Nielsen, sweetheart, she's like, I'm sorry. I wish I could make it better. I'm like, Kim, it's the best haircut I've ever had. I look like Mad Max. I love it. It's absolutely awesome. I loved it.
Yeah, I think it was probably when I was in high school and maybe college when I had long hair and cut it in the past. I donated it to Locks of Love, and you're right. It's a really good
Oh,
feeling.
good.
Because if you donate a lot, they can make several wigs out of it. Usually they make like at least 3 or 4, I think, if you have, because they kind of divide it up into like 4
Yeah.
ponytail.
Yeah. That's, you need to be really good with that because, yeah, they do tie it up into multiple and snip, snip. So it's not just like one quick snip. It's like snip again and again. But we had fun with it. I brought swords and a chainsaw and a lightsaber. And I'm like, what are we going to use to cut it off today? Just take it back to toys, I guess. We see some vintage collection back there. So was that your toy of choice when you were growing up?
Well, it's funny, I think, and these are I guess the 77 to 85, like the old,
The original
original
retro collection, they're called now.
retro. Yeah. Yeah, I think those are the first toys I remember getting as far as recognizable figures. I was living in Florida at the time, and I think it might have been Return Empire or Return the Jedi when I started getting them. And I was really young, but my parents would just buy them probably because they were on sale at one of the stores. So I had those as a kid, and of course I gave them away at some point when I got into something else, and then. But I always had a few ones that I liked a lot, and I kept, and they're all swingy. The joints were all, how that is, like they were played with.
Yeah.
And as an adult, as we all seem to do, we want to kind of reconnect with our childhood to some, in one way or another. And I've always just loved the simplicity of the original figures. I mean, it's kind of interesting. The figures are very simple. I mean, a lot of the human molds are kind of, they're not, by today's standards, are pretty bad. A lot of the robots, I think, look great, but the vehicles, I think, are amazing. I mean,
Yes.
as like they reuse the molds for the Power of the Force.
Force too, yeah.
Line, I mean, that says a lot. I mean, that's that, and there was that long stint of, from I guess it was 85 to 96, was it? There was no, except for those Bendums, there were no Star Wars toys.
Right, yeah.
But yeah, I don't know what it is. It's just, and I guess they're kind of timeless to me.
As we get older, the memory goes a little bit. Memories fade, but toys don't fade. Toys are memories that don't fade. And I think that's why now vintage toys are such a popular thing. 20 years ago, they weren't. You were a loser. If you had, what are you still playing with those things? Because the memories were still vivid. Like, I don't need those G.I. Joes. I remember them. Wait 20 years. And then those memories start to fade. And it's pretty amazing to be able to pick up a tangible memory that is as bright and vivid as the day you first picked it up. So reissues are great. I love them. But if you actually get a reissue there's some Transformers reissues that are exactly like the original. Or like an actual vintage G.I. Joe. Luckily, those aren't all that expensive still. Or a vintage He-Man figure in great condition. You can be, traveling through time, and there's it's not just, oh, I remember my He-Man. There he is, and you see the detail. And about the sculpting, I agree with you 100%. They're simplistic, but a lot better than the stuff that came just before it. So if you remember the little green army men, and even stuff from 10 years before that, they were getting there. But I think the late 70s and 80s toys are where they got to the right spot. It's still simple, but there is just enough detail. And the stuff today, the articulation is insane, and I think it takes away from the look of the figure because you've got an articulation point everywhere. Here. You got an articulation point in the jaw and the ears and pretty soon they're going to have articulated eyebrows, and there's going to be a crease going through the whole head and through the middle of the head so you can furrow the brow. It's like a Hot Toys with those posable eyes. How the 12-inch doll Hot Toy figures, the eyes can move around. which is cool. But sometimes you get like the giant, you know, eyes. It's like you may have gone too far here. There is such a thing as going too far. So that's
Yeah,
why, like, you hold up a brand new, super articulated Star Wars figure next to a vintage one. I tend to go with the vintage one.
yeah, that's a really good point, and it's something like I've never really gotten into the like the Marvel Legends line much. I think I have one Marvel Legends figure because it just to me like the joints, like I'm not going to be playing with it, and I don't really care about crazy posability. If I'm going to display it, I want it to look like even like a good cartoon representation, or like of the figure or whatever. But when you have so many weird joints and the legs always look weird, and a lot of the superposable figures, like the where the
Balls
legs,
everywhere. Balls,
yeah,
like ball joints,
right,
like balls on the legs, on the arms, everywhere.
yeah, just the ball joints. And that's exactly what it is. Like I'd much rather have less articulation, even just very simple articulation, but a really nice looking figure. Although as when I was playing with them, it would have been the opposite. I would want the most posable, so I can actually battle him. But as an adult, uh, I just the classic, the less articulation is just so much more appealing to me. You know,
That's what they've done with some of the masterpiece transformers. They've actually taken a step back, and like you can handle some of the masterpiece transformers like Trax, infamous Trax, and you go, "Where's the articulation? This sucks." But what they were going for is more of a cartoon look. They want him to look like he leapt off the cartoon. He can bend his knees a bit. He can sort of bend his arms, but they didn't want to sacrifice the look of the cartoon for like joints, creases everywhere. And then you get third party masterpiece transformers that like they have bends where you're not even supposed to bend. And it's just like this gangly, weird skeleton Terminator, endoskeleton looking thing, which great posability, but like, what does it look like sitting there trying to hold a pose? Those Marvel Legends, I used to have a bunch of them, and now that you mention that, I think that's why I got rid of most of them, because they look like they need clothes. Like the 12-inch figures can get away with it because you can put a jacket and pants on them, and it covers like the empty elbow and the empty shoulder and like the empty gap where the neck connects. That's all fine with a 12-inch figure, but Marvel Legends are just, I like how they look, but it's just too many creases.
right. And I've also noticed I've only bought one, so maybe my sample size is kind of skewed, but compared to like I guess my as far as the I guess light comparison would be to I collected a lot of the Toy Biz Marvel Comics figures, and I still have a ton of them.
Yeah, I love those. Those take me back to the 80s. The very like simplistic, you're lucky if the knee bends type of
Right,
articulation.
right. But I think you mentioned before, like the plastic is different now. It
Yeah.
just didn't feel as sturdy, and I think like the random things would be loose, like the arm would be loose, like right off the bat,
Yeah.
and it was kind of thinking like, wow, I've thinking back to when I was buying. I mean, granted, there was fewer points of articulation, but when I was buying stuff, when I was younger, I never remembered anything being loose. They'd be too tight, if anything. So it's kind of weird, and you're paying more money. I mean, maybe inflation, would counteract that, but I just think that it's almost like they're trying to do too much, and they're not. They just don't seem to be quite as sturdy and as quality as what they used to be, or at least what I'm paying, $20 or more for a lot of these figures.
You get a lot of people breaking things right out of the package. There's those Super 7 Masters of the Universe Vintage Collection where they try to update the legs so that you wouldn't have to deal with a rubber band, and people are just breaking the legs right off of them.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and it's not like so it's an actual joint in the leg now. The old masters were notorious for not being able to stand up because of that. They'd go pigeon-toed or whatever the opposite of pigeon-toed is. So they got rid of the band, and now it's like a joint. It's not quite a ball joint. It's like a weird swivel joint, but the plastic they use is brittle. It's peanut brittle. So one of the ones that I reviewed, I was very careful with, and I'm thinking, I've heeded the warnings of of the victims, and I didn't force it because I knew like this is gonna snap right off. Something is I don't know, gotten stuck in there, glued by accident, or the tolerances are off or something. And Like I never had a GI Joe out of the package where I, yay, whoosh, throw the package away because it's garbage. Who knew? Who knew, right? But move the arm around. I never had an arm pop off a Joe,
Right.
or when I was moving the knees and stuff, I never had a leg break off of a GI Joe ever. Never,
Mm-hmm.
no exceptions. It's crazy to think about that because I had a lot of GI Joes. Thundercats, as horrible as they are in terms of like compared to the other ones, their plastic quality is bad. LJN didn't use good stuff for them, so they're getting sticky and spotty and stuff. But
Mm-hmm.
same deal. I never broke an arm off of a Thundercat or a head or anything like that. They could take a beating, body slams and the sling 'em fling 'em ring and all that. So it's just, I guess, a sign of the times. They're trying to put stuff out there with all this articulation, but the materials they're using just aren't up to snuff.
Do you think that's a product of them trying to save money, or do you think we just don't have the resources necessarily? Like we don't have the unlimited oil we used to have, or is it a combination?
Um, yeah,
Petroleum
they're
to make plastic.
they're trying to save money. I mean, it was the toys were cheaper back then. The oil was cheaper back then.
That's
So
true.
they made the toys with the oil, the resources they had available to them, and they got as cheap as they could. Back then. Now, looking back, we can see that the Hasbro used higher quality plastics than LJN did or Mattel did. That can't be disputed. I don't see how someone can say no. A He-Man figure is way better quality than a GI Joe in terms of materials. Time has told. The He-Man
Right.
guys are sticky, and they're breaking down and getting spotty. GI Joes are as good as the day you bought them almost. Like some of the vehicles are getting brittle and stuff, but I have tons of GI Joe figures, and I still put the guns in their hands, and I kind of cross my fingers when I do. I hope a thumb doesn't snap off. They don't. Like
Right.
they just don't. Some of the heels break when I put a foot stand on them, but that's the foot stand's problem. It's if it's not designed well, it's too tight or something like that. They are getting a little more brittle, but today I think it's definitely cheaper materials, and I guess maybe they feel like they have to make up for it by having all of the extra articulation and the detail, but they're forgetting that this is supposed to be fun stuff. It's supposed to be toy stuff. So you're
Hmm.
not, I don't want my toys to be 4K. Like I'm fine with standard definition toys, to use that, technical term, standard definite, or even 720 maybe. I like the occasional 720 toy. I consider the Masterpiece Takara Transformers and the third party guys 720, but I don't need 4K. I just watched a movie in 4K the other day. I've heard about it forever and never actually watched a movie in 4K from beginning to end on a giant 4K TV, and I did not like it. I just
Really?
went, this is not right. Like I don't want to see Will Ferrell's pimples and his pockmarks and stuff. Like the whole concept behind movies and stuff was that the camera would hide a little bit. Like they put the pancake makeup on you, and if you were to see an actor in person caked up, it looks really weird. Like, oh my God, you look really weird. It looks great on camera. Don't worry, it'll look fine on camera. Now, it looks on camera. This is mind blowing. Just like if you were standing there looking at it. And now people are like, oh, that's weird. So they've had to do different makeup techniques, and it's just too much detail. Like when you can see an actress actually have some sort of blemish on her forehead, which it's not a big deal. But in a movie, a big budget movie where every tiny little thing is so important, and 4K makes everything so important, like the pimple, she's going out of her mind that day. Oh my God, I have a pimple. This is in 4K.
Right. It's funny that you mentioned that because all my movies are either Blu-ray or DVD. Mostly, they're most DVD, and then I'm not even sure if we have I think we have an HD DVD, HD TV. I'm not super technically inclined when it comes to that stuff, to video stuff. But I watched the Fly at a friend's house, and I think he must have had an HD, like or some really really high definition television. It might have been in 4K. But I remember thinking the makeup and watching that movie was just amazing and just great special effects. And when my wife had never seen the movie before, and of course when they show it on that super high definition TV, it looked really bad. And I was just thinking to myself, oh, this is terrible. My wife's going to see
Yeah.
this movie and think she's not going to appreciate it the way it was kind of meant to be seen,
Yeah.
without super high definition where you can see every little thing,
Absolutely. Like The Thing comes to mind, and that's one of the grossest, creepiest, most terrifying movies I've ever seen. And I'd never want to watch that movie in 4K after seeing a movie in 4K ever. That's not a selling point to me. I know
Right.
more is a giant selling point to a lot of people. More, because more is more. And I don't want to see the seams on the makeup, or just like the where the skin joins with the latex and stuff like that. I don't want the illusion shattered, and that's what was great in the old days about special effects, is the lack of definition hid some of the effects, and it helped create the illusion. Now it's too detailed, and it's probably contributing to this nitpicking mentality that a lot of people have, because they're being encouraged to nitpick, right? In addition to American Idol, where someone sings an amazing rendition of a song, and you get judges who go,
Right.
and they nitpick, and you watch that every week, and you're going to start doing that. So, people are going to buy a toy, and instead of, oh, that's so awesome, they do this.
Right.
He's got a wonky eye. I remember when I did that years ago, the Club Grayskull He-Man figure, the Filmation looking He-Man figure, and I loved it. I thought he looks like he came off the cartoon. Couple too many articulation joints, but I thought it was great. I loved it, and a couple people just missed it. They just missed the whole figure. They missed the whole video. I had a lot of fun doing the video too. They missed everything because they were in 4K mode. And they're like, but the eye is wonky. Like 2017 or whatever year it came out, paint job. It wasn't a perfect paint job. I didn't care because I see the world in SD, not 4K. And I thank God every day that I see the world in SD still.
It's interesting. Whereas people have, when it comes to video, they want clear. It was a VHS to DVD, then from DVD to Blu-ray, and then 4K or whatever the technology. They want it to be as real as possible. With music, it went from CD, and then there was a format called SACD, and then HDCD, which was sort of the DVD or the CD world with higher definition sound. Then people realized, actually, we just want it to be portable and free. So now it went from that to I guess right,
thin air.
MP3, and then now it's streaming. They don't even want to own it anymore.
Yeah.
So it's so funny how people, I guess it makes sense. People are probably more visual, which makes sense. And then the niche of people that want really high quality sound, or to focus on that for music, it's just that it just wasn't there to support that part of the industry. But it is interesting to see what people want to push, and what people, they'd rather have convenience for one thing and the absolute best of quality for the other thing.
I thought you were going to take it back to vinyl and say, and now we're back to vinyl, because vinyl is really coming in strong. But I think vinyl is like a little like a niche, and it's more of the intangible streaming thing, or MP3, like data type of thing. So a lot of the younger generation, everything is training in your life, and I think we are the way we are because of the things we grew up on. I think a lot of people find inspiration in all these old toys, these characters, because of the message behind the shows and the comics. And it just makes me wonder, in 10, 20, 30 years, what's it going to be like to be a kid who grew up not having an actual tangible thing. And they can kind of laugh at the old fogies who have an actual thing that is in the hand, and you can look at it and marvel at it, a little piece of artwork, and go, oh God, you're so old. But what's it going to be like in 20 years when they don't have anything? Like they can, I guess, load the song up again and listen to it, but there won't be an actual physical connection. And like on some level, you would think that's a great thing. To be less materialistic is a good thing, right? We should all be less materialistic. I hope it turns out to be a good thing. But I just I got a bad feeling about this that it's not going to end up being a good thing. That it's actually going to, instead of being less materialistic, it might lead to like just this kind of aloof, detached, not caring about anything attitude. Nothing matters type of thing.
Yeah, I think we're already kind of there, or at least with music's concerned, because really, and not to get too deep into that, but with music, it's so much more difficult to make a living because you're really, when it comes down to it, you can only make a living by selling something, or a service or a product. So with music, it was CDs, vinyl, concerts, etc. People essentially the whole buying CDs or buying physical copies of music is such a niche thing. There is vinyl, but for the most part, that's not even part of the equation anymore. You probably recoup your costs. So now it's now bands are having to go out and their commodity, what they sell. I mean, of course, you put the concert on. If you're a big level band, you'll make money on the show. If you're a mid level band, you're not going to make money on the show because all your expenses, with the tour bus, et cetera. So you can break it down to you are essentially doing all this, making music, going on tour, playing shows to sell T-shirts. That's the last thing bands can, and merch. Like that is literally the last thing bands can really make money on or T-shirts. So you're really in the T-shirt business.
Like,
if you're
like pro wrestlers. Yeah, they spend all of their earnings on the road, hotels and food and stuff, but after the show, open up the back of the van and who wants to buy a T-shirt?
Right.
Do you have any T-shirts for your band?
We do. What size are you? I'll send you one.
Oh, that's a medium. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. I think we have a medium.
Or a large, or an extra large.
Okay.
Large, medium, or large.
Okay. Yeah, we do have T-shirts. We haven't really done a whole lot of merch lately. We're kind of at this point since I moved from my hometown. We're kind of everybody's so far apart that we just kind of do things when we can, and we don't really play shows much anymore. But I do have, I think I have some, and the band's called Atma Weapon, which is in reference to Final Fantasy 3 or 6, depending on if you're from the United States or Japan. For Super Nintendo, it's a boss in the game. So there's a picture of the monster on there.
Awesome.
So the cool thing is you can just wear that, and you can just be you like that game. It won't even matter.
Yeah. So. That's, I've designed a couple of T-shirts. Have you ever looked into the sites like TeePublic or Teespring? Those cafe press kind of do-it-yourself T-shirt design. Great thing about those is you don't have to buy stock and have them sit in your basement for a year, collecting weird smells.
That's literally what I'm doing with the T-shirts we have.
Yeah, if you just go onto one of those sites, you can design your shirt, and then when someone orders one, they print it up for them and they send it to them, and you never see the shirt. So all you're responsible for is designing. But whenever I've designed T-shirts, I try to have it be so that it's not my face on the front with a double thumb, Michael Mercy fan. Like, no one wants to wear that. I'm a wrestling fan, and I've seen so many bad wrestling T-shirts in my day of just like that, like the wrestler on the front. Like, people don't want to, they want that double meaning where you can look at it and go, well, it doesn't have to be that. It can be something else. Austin 316 is one of the biggest wrestling T-shirt sellers of all time. And it's like, you don't even have to be a wrestling fan to think that's cool. It's like, oh, John's 316. What's Austin 316? I just whooped your ass. I'm like, oh, holy crap. And then on the back, it's got a skull. I'm like, holy crap. That's a really genius design. So when I try to do stuff, I don't want to do something really, and I can't because of copyright stuff. I can't just do an Optimus Prime, but I want to do something that kind of captures that. So I'll do a silhouette of, an Optimus Prime looking figure with just the word behind him, freedom. And to me, his quote is, freedom is the right of all sentient beings. So that's kind of like a shirt that someone can look at and go, what is that? Instead of, oh, you're wearing a toy shirt.
Right. That's smart. Yeah, it's you're going to appeal to many more people than if it were just your face, or that's the whole like band t-shirts with the people's faces, I never bought those just because for that reason. It's kind of like, it's just some, I don't want to buy a, Metallica faces shirt. I want to buy a cool Metallica skull shirt, you know?
Yeah. I want to ask, since you're in a band, have you ever done one of those pictures? I see so many of them, band pictures, still to this day, where the band is just standing there and they're all together and they're looking at the camera, all like serious. You know the type of framing I'm talking about. Like they're kind of looking down at the camera and they're all, it's almost a full length picture, and we're the band and we're awesome,
Yeah.
like not doing anything.
About all of them are like that, actually.
That's the only
That's
way
kind
you
of
can do it.
Yeah, I think it's because it's so weird to have a band because really you're taking the band out of context.
Right. No instruments. They're just
Right.
standing there.
And even if you had a band, like a shirt with everybody having their little instrument, that'd probably be just as bad. I think the best band shirt should be like a concert footage of like a
Yes.
still of them all together doing what they're doing.
Yeah,
You
like
know,
Angus Young rocking out in the outfit with the guitar. That's a shirt or an image,
exactly.
that I want to see.
Whereas, otherwise it's like a school photo. You're all just sitting there like
Yeah. What
smiling. And
was that? There's a music video by Journey. I think it was Separate Ways, where they're playing the instruments like on a dock. And the
right.
one guy has the keyboard. I lose it whenever I see it on the wall.
Yes.
He's
Yeah.
playing the keyboard on the wall, and I had to applaud them. Like, at least it's not just standing there, like some of the music videos that they do. The singer is singing there, and the band is just standing behind him with like out of context, like you said, no instruments. Like, what am I doing? I'm back up, but I'm not doing anything. Have you had a
Right.
chance to do any music videos?
Yes, we've done 3 music videos, and the first one we did was a performance video, which was as awkward as that felt to be kind of like, filming individuals playing the song on the stage. It was awkward, but it it turned out really well. And then we did 2 other videos, both of them, I mean, like zero budget. Essentially, we were doing it to kind of help a guy's reel,
Yeah.
it was great, and it was an offer to us. We didn't approach him. But the other 2 were there was some story in it, and I thought those would be worst because having like 1 or 2 days to shoot and trying to put like a story together that's that makes sense or even is appealing to look at. It's just the performance thing. I think is the best for if you're a band. Just do a performance video and
Yeah.
just call it a day. I think that. I mean, unless you have a lot of money and want to put something really interesting together, but
There's no point. I don't think there's any point in doing story music videos anymore because
right.
did the best one that'll ever be done with Take Me
Oh,
On, Take On Me. Who can ever top that?
yeah,
Like
that was
it's
the
it's
best.
it's awesome. And I still don't know how they did that. I mean, that's a video that I don't think they could do today if they tried with computers and all that stuff.
Right. Yeah, because they would probably try to do some. They try to take the easy way out and do the CG or they use too much computer, assistance. I think they probably it was mostly just an animating. Probably was old school and maybe did some splicing on the actual film.
Yeah,
Yeah.
rotoscoping. Yeah, today it would be in 4K, and you'd be able to tell what's paper and what's real and whatever. But we're over an hour here, so last thing I wanted to close with before we sign off here is with your songs. Have you ever written a song or were inspired by like it doesn't have to be a toy character, like a pop culture character, something that really resonated with you?
What's interesting is, and I don't actually think about this consciously, but whenever I play my music for people, they hear it for the first time. Some of the stuff I've written, they're always like, this sounds like it could be from a video game. Like I guess the melodies I choose and the kind of guitar things, they're always associating with video games, which kind of makes sense because it might have been subconscious, but I think video game music has always been, it's not something I've listened to like outside of playing the game. In fact, I think I prefer leaving that in context because while the songs are really short and you kind of wear them out if you just listen to the soundtrack for whatever. Of a video game, but I think I take most influence from video game music and just that sort of those limited sound resources they had. They really had to focus on, like, think about Nintendo, which was NES, which is probably the first, like, I mean, Atari, the music was kind of more beeps and
It was like a
blips.
10-second loop.
Right. They really could start to have actual, compositions that sounded like compositions with Nintendo, but they didn't have a whole lot to work with. So really, for like, they had really had to focus on great melodies and catchy songs. Like, for example, like all the Mega Man games are
Yeah.
sort of notorious for
Mario.
having, and Mario, of course. So I think, I may have the imagery of maybe even fantasy or science fiction sort of in my head when I'm coming up with things, but I think it's mostly like the influence from the whole video game realm. I mean, we named our band after a video game character that half the band had never heard of, but they just accepted it. Like, oh, okay, whatever. We can't think of anything else, so I guess we'll be Atma Weapon. I've never played that game before, but the two of us that wanted to call it that were very, very passionate about it, so we made it happen.
It's a cool name.
And also, before we finish up, I wanted to touch on, or just briefly, I know it's a huge subject, but TV. What have you seen the anthology shows? Like, do you remember Tales from the Dark Side at all, or
Never got into that one. No.
that is another thing. Like, when it comes to nostalgia, I grab so much nostalgia and enjoy nostalgia from old television, all those old television shows.
I do love old TV. That's not one of the shows I grew up on, so I don't go back to it. But I have a big, being on Patreon, you've seen my 80s DVD collection.
Yeah.
And, I say I love SD. Maybe I should say 1080. Like, that's because watching Knight Rider in 1080 HD, Airwolf, I think that's as far as I want to go. And I think that's as far as a lot of those shows can go. I think that's the max res for them anyway. But 80s TV to me is like 80s toys. It's all of this stuff is a product of its time. And those 80s shows have the same type of intensity, but fun too. Like, it's not dark and grounded. Things can be intense today, but they're dark and grounded. Just look at Game of Thrones. But stuff back then, like Knight Rider, had this little tinge of darkness to it. But the constant banter with Michael Knight and Kit, and the funness, and it was just lighthearted. So I like a lot of those 80s shows. Even the more edgy stuff like Hunter is still so lighthearted. Like, even the music, Mike Post and Pete Carpenter.
Right.
You a fan of those guys?
Oh yeah, Mike
Yeah.
Poston, he's of course famous for Law and Order.
Yep.
He does that show, and I think it's amazing that how simple that music is, but how effective it is. You can't imagine anybody else, any other kind of music on those types of shows. It's very specific, very specific sound that just works so well.
Mike Post, for movie fans who know John Williams and love John Williams, well, Mike Post is the John Williams of 80s TV. If they needed a great, memorable theme, they called in Mike Post. I remember the first theme of Magnum PI was what it was. Did you ever hear the first version?
I can hear the second version, but I can't hear the first version in my.
The first one was weird, like, because when I picked up the DVD set, I popped it in and I was so pumped. I'm like, okay, here we go. Dun, 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 dun. So I press play and I'm like ready to sing along, and then I hear dum dum doo 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 dum doo 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 dum doo 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 dum dun 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 dun. I'm like, what is this? So they ended up, that wasn't a Mike Post theme. They got him later to get the one that we all know and love, which doesn't really represent the show well when you think about it. The show wasn't a high octane show. It was like a private investigator, kind of discovering clues and stuff, and a couple shootouts here or there. So maybe the irony is the first theme actually fits the show better, because that's kind of what it was, him walking around in a Bermuda shirt and shorts. It's kind of schmaltzy lounge stuff. Lounge music is what it sounded like. But there are so many Mike Post themes. Hardcastle and McCormick. Man, Drive! I love putting that one on the stereo in the van and just peeling out.
I think for recent television, I binged the Game of Thrones, the whole series in the last month and a half,
Ah,
um,
what?
which was really.
So you had never seen any before?
I'd seen a couple. I'd unfortunately seen a couple of episodes that were pretty pivotal with
Ah,
my wife. She watched them, and I saw some of the big like reveals or the deaths.
Red
I didn't really
Wedding.
understand them. Yeah, I didn't see the Red Wedding,
Ah,
which was that blew my mind when that happened. Like I was in utter shock when that happened. But
yeah, that was like an all bets are off. This show does not follow any rules or any tropes or any contracts or any type of anything. Like they just, holy crap, that was, out of left field. But would you, being someone who didn't really get into it, and like I've been watching it for years and then finished it and went, oh, that was okay. And it seems like so many people I talk to who have been fans for years watch that final season and go, it was okay. What'd you think of it?
right, I can absolutely understand that point of view, and I think the first few episodes I think were awesome. Like
Yes, the
the
build,
build up, the build up to the fight, to the big battle was one of my favorites. You know,
magnificent. Yeah,
because it's you have that looming. I think a lot of the more interesting television or movies is not the action, but the stuff before the action where you're anticipating something happening or a big battle, and they're all kind of as they're all kind of talking with each other and exploring their humanity and their relationships. And of course, the battle was I thought that was pretty great. But then after that, what it just seemed like there needed to be a whole nother season to take place of what
yes,
I think it was just rushed. I thought some of the endings of characters weren't given their due,
yep.
like I don't give any
Jamie.
spoilers. But oh yeah, and if he and Cersei were, I thought they deserved more of a, I don't know, momentous ending, whatever was going to happen with them.
Well, it's one thing like Jamie's whole journey gets reset, rebooted, and then
Right.
Daenerys's whole thing. I mean, she can be the Mad Queen, but again, rushed. Man, that was so rushed.
It was like
And it
an
might have also been weak directing too. People say weak writing, but I think more it was weak directing, especially the final episode. Such a pivotal episode. It's just too much to do in one episode. But those guys aren't experienced directors. I mean, they're experienced writers. They're not experienced directors. And they said, well, or someone else said, you guys are doing it. They just didn't have the experience to do it, and you don't rise to the level of your expectations. You fall to the level of your training. And I think what we saw in the final episode is two writers who fell to the level of their directing training, which was amateur. I mean, that's what it was. That's what I felt it was, because I saw things being done in a way that, like, why would you do that? Why aren't we getting closer up with Daenerys's face? Why aren't we seeing the madness in her eyes? Why are you shooting her from so far away? I can't see how crazy she is from far away. It's just a standard film technique where if someone's crazy, you get in there. That's why The Dark Knight, we really get how crazy the Joker is because we get close to him. We see all that grossness, the scars and the eyes, and they're not afraid to stick a camera in his face. And it just felt like this is absolutely something that I've seen firsthand when I was a young director, not wanting to get close, just not comfortable. And then over the years working with younger people, seeing also the lack of confidence, of chutzpah, where they don't want to get close. And I've told a lot of young people, get in there. Get in there. I'm like, I'm like, don't be afraid, man. Intensity. Intensity is the key in everything in life. Life is not worth living without intensity. Get in there. And it makes them feel awkward because they're not used to that closeness. One of the techniques, great techniques that I saw some actors doing is they get nose to nose, which can be terrifying for people who are afraid of proximity. But these guys would get nose to nose, look like literally eyeball to eyeball, and just stream of consciousness. So one guy
Huh.
takes a turn and then another guy takes a turn. man, you do that after a while, you just don't have any social anxiety whatsoever anymore. You just become one of those guys who puts your arm around another guy and like, hey buddy, you're not in your own head. You're
Right.
connected. So that's all I kept picking up on that final episode. I was seeing it directed by guys who weren't connected.
Right. I mean, I think the show overall, like looking back, and I think it's a masterpiece, like 100%. I think it's one of the best shows I've ever seen, and the amount of, like the stuff that happens is just great. Just amazing in the world that was created. I mean, that's no small feat. So I really commend them for that. And I do have to give them some slack. I'm just thinking, like my real favorite show of all time, Seinfeld. And we all know how the final
Final
episode,
episode, yeah.
it's almost, I think, impossible to really wrap up a show neatly. And I think it's when a show's that popular and they've been going on for so long, I think I have to give them credit for doing what they could to make it, wrap up neatly, how to kind of please the most people or to make sense. And it's going back to Game of Thrones. I felt like it was kind of bittersweet, but I felt, okay, well, this kind of makes sense. I appreciate where people ended up. There were some people I wish had ended up in a different place, but I wasn't like shaking my fist. I was kind of like, okay.
It was okay. I mean,
Right. But then,
I thought it was okay. It could have been amazing, but it was okay. Because they did build up the whole prophecy, Azor Ahai, Lightbringer. And you have all these visions of, oh my God, the prophecy and destiny. And it turns out, like, that's it.
right.
It just
Right.
thought it would be a little more glamorous than that. So,
And I
but
do understand for people watching for years. I mean, it's a whole different experience if you've
yes,
been like 2012. So it's like 6, 7 years.
not as
So,
invested in it. Yeah.
right.
So yeah, when you hear about those legends and you hear about them and hear about them and you theorize and you see the theories and you're like, this is going to be mind blowing, and then it just turns out to be,
Right.
it's like that's it.
But
Yeah.
I will read the books now, though, based on I haven't read the books, but I have the first one. I'm very excited to read the books because I hear it's still going on, and it's not, the show went past where the books are at currently,
Yep.
which is interesting.
Yeah, I read part of the first book, and it's amazing. It is really, really amazing. He's a brilliant writer, and it'll be interesting to see what path the books take because, as the story goes, they were churning out the seasons and they were telling him, hurry up. And he was like, I don't hurry. So he was one of those
Oh,
guys to go back, earlier in our conversation, not a fan of deadlines. And he was like, creativity versus profit and deadline. So I commend him for saying, no, the book's not ready. And I can't churn it out by Christmas because you got a deadline. So hats off to him. He
oh
did
yeah.
tell them, like, this will happen and that'll happen. He gave them like bullet points,
Mhm.
and some of the cool stuff I think was derived from the bullet points, and maybe some of the other stuff that kind of felt weak was maybe, I don't know, different interpretation. I bet his will be better. Hopefully it'll be better. I always go back to the Revenge of the Sith book because we got the Revenge of the Sith movie, which I thought was okay, pretty good. And then the book, which is an absolute masterpiece. It's the same
Really?
story. Yeah, it's the same story. But I read that book and I just go, you are my prequel trilogy. You are a masterpiece on the same level as the original trilogy. Mind
Really?
blowing, soul filling. I can't say enough good things about Matthew Stover's Revenge of the Sith book. And then they did an audiobook of it with like all the music and the sound effects, and he does the voices of everyone perfectly. It's like it was the prequel experience that I always dreamed of and never thought we'd get.
Wow.
Yeah.
So he wrote it after the fact. So did they give him like the script, or did they give him the
He wrote it.
synopsis?
I think he wrote it during the production of the film. So same deal. He had bullet points, but I think Uncle George gave him free reign. He said, "Oh, look, just don't change the situations." But we're not, bogged down with that dialogue from the movie because that's one of the things that people have a problem with. Oh, the dialogue. So he wrote his own dialogue. So the same message is conveyed, but I think written much better, and more visualization. Yeah, it's a different medium, but I think the things that he does in the book could have totally been done in the movie. It's just that's not the vision that the director of the movie wanted to take. So in the book, one of the things he does in order to represent the dark side is a whisper that Anakin keeps hearing, like the dragon. This, it gets really connected. It gets really deep into his psyche. This dragon, it keeps, telling him that things are going to go wrong. Padme's going to die. This is going to happen. Still kind of the same situation, but when the turn happens in the movie, we got this kid who kneels down. What have I done? And it's like that kind of letdown moment. Like, what have I done? That's the turn. In the book, it's this really powerful, like, holy smokes moment where he's done it. He's dark side. And now he's powerful and he'll never be afraid again. He's spent his whole life being afraid and he'll never be afraid again. And then he hears the whisper again and he knows he's screwed.
Oh, wow. That's great.
And that is like chill bumps moment. Like, you don't get that from the movie. You just get, oh no. And it's lacking. And in the book, you find out, like, you get that moment of wow. And then, uh-oh. And you're screwed, man. It didn't work. It didn't work. You've just screwed everything up. And it goes back to that Yoda line. Once you start down the dark path, forever will it dominate your destiny. You realize this guy really is screwed until that moment where he dies. And even then, like, he was redeemed for a minute. But ultimately, there was no happy ending for him, really. There's no dancing into the sunset with his son and his daughter.
Right.
So, yeah, if you're a Star Wars fan, I highly recommend either the book or hunting down the audiobook because it is so satisfying. Whenever I sit down to watch the original trilogy now, I put the Revenge of the Sith audiobook on and listen to that first to set it all up.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah,
that's a good idea.
It's an amazing setup. So that is an hour and a half. Man, I've had a blast. This has been so awesome. Soul food for me. I really enjoy talking about this stuff. I wish maybe we could have talked an hour and a half about why Ben Kenobi's lightsaber was yellow.
Well,
maybe for the people who are curious, let's just touch on that. Do you know why his lightsaber was the lightsabers were the wrong colors in the vintage line?
Is it because they didn't? Did they produce the toys beforehand, or like that sort of situation?
I think so, probably. Yeah,
sort of like the blue snaggletooth kind of thing, where he was wrong height.
Yeah, it must be because Return of the Jedi, the first trailer for Return of the Jedi, Luke had a blue lightsaber, didn't he? And they changed that late in the game. Like when the movie came out, people were like, "It's green. Why is it green?" So I remember seeing Jedi Luke Skywalker figures with blue lightsabers because they were like, "Isn't it blue? Someone get on the phone to Kenner. Tell him it's green now."
Yeah, I think a lot of it too is they probably didn't. The whole sort of fandom thing didn't exist back then, so they probably weren't as careful about those things. Or if there was a mistake made,
yeah,
it's just a toy for kids. They probably didn't think about it how we do now, where people are like every minute detail, nitpicking.
Kids weren't nitpickers. That's just the truth. Like a kid was able to see a toy and see it for the awesome, fun toy that it was, and stick the lightsaber out, and the color didn't even matter. And I remember being a kid and seeing a few things here and there that I thought, hey, that's not quite right, but whatever. It's not perfect and it doesn't have to be. Just get over it and enjoy it.
Yeah, I'm happy to have a representation of what I like. I'm just going to play with it and be creative with it, And
you've got some awesome representations behind you there. That B-Wing is just, it's like a model.
Oh, I know.
Some of the vintage toys, like the Falcon, is a little like disproportionate, for room for the figures and stuff. But other ones like that B-Wing is just, man, I think it's exactly like it looked in the movie.
Yeah, I like the B-Wing. That's my favorite vehicle by far.
Does it have a gyroscoping cockpit on it as well?
It's amazing. It does.
It does.
Yeah. It's amazing. I mean, it really is amazing. It's one of those, like you said, it is like a model, and they obviously put a lot of time into it. But it didn't get very much screen time. Barely got screen time in, what is it, Jedi, I think,
Return of the Jedi. Same with the A-Wings. They were just kind of in the background there.
Right. But then, of course, just like Star Wars, they made a whole toy for it. It could be on screen for 1 second.
Yeah.
And then Oh, it's a character. Oh, and it's a vehicle. They just that's the
Yeah,
beauty of
like all the skiff guys and the cantina guys. And I also saw you got an army of stormtroopers there too. Army build.
Oh,
Oh, cool. All the Imperials. Holy smokes. That's awesome. And oh, that's great stuff on the bottom
here.
too.
I'll
Turn,
do a quick close up real quick. Just
turning into a little mini room tour here.
yeah.
Wow, they look great all together.
So then I just have the different Tie fighters
Oh, that's great. The Emperor, TIE
and then of course
Interceptor.
the top shelf is the Falcon, and I got my sort of Star Wars shelf here, and a whole bunch of Luke and the Tie fighter outfit, but I pretend like there are other Tie fighters, other
Uh,
pilots.
I love that you call it Star Wars as it by its proper name, Star Wars, not that the subtitle.
And you can see this moves. I can't see if I'm filming this correctly. You see the viewing?
Yeah, I think you might be covering your microphone though.
Oh, okay. Is that better now?
Still sounds about the same.
Oh, okay. Well, let's see. So here, I'll just show you the bottom two shelves real quick.
Sure.
I'll just let you react.
Oh, Gamorrean guards. That's so cool. The Jedi Luke. Oh man, beautiful. Oh, AT-AT Walker. AT-AT. Awesome. So awesome. That is a great collection. And the shuttle Tidarium.
Yeah, the shuttle's the most ridiculous toy because I think that's probably the most in scale. It's huge, and it's one of those. I think it was the most expensive toy that they produced. It's the most expensive one I ever bought. Now too. So
It was always weird to me that it was so big. Like, of all the giant Star Wars vehicles, why shuttle Tidarium? Like,
right,
they shrunk down the Falcon, they shrunk down the X-Wing, but we got to make the shuttle giant.
right, and it was probably. I mean, it carried the Emperor places, but other than that, it didn't fight in any battles to my if memory serves correctly. So
Yeah.
it's probably one of the toys that the kids would probably care the least about. Like you said, being in scale. It's just, oh, okay, well, the Emperor's going to come out of here, and then that's going to be that, but it's not going to fly around like a TIE fighter.
Yeah. So, how much of that stuff behind you is your original stuff?
Maybe 2%.
Yeah. Yeah.
4%,
Been there.
but I don't get like, I know some people get very nostalgic about having the exact same figure that I'm not really like that. I mean, maybe in a certain instances, but for the most part, I don't really care if it's the one I had or if it's a better one.
Yeah, I'm exactly the same way. It's such an amazing hobby because you can get back what you had at a really decent price.
Right.
There's people who are like, I need to have that thing that I had. Well, there was only one in existence, so it's gone forever. Too bad. Or it still exists and you're going to pay a lot of money for it. Or there were like 10 of them. But these things were mass produced, hundreds of thousands of them. So how could you not love the idea of if there was a figure that was really special to you, G.I. Joe Breaker or Luke Skywalker or Optimus Prime, and it was really special to you. And even today you can go into a Walmart in the States or Canada and buy Optimus Prime still. The one that was on
Right.
shelves in 84. A little too expensive maybe, but he's cheaper than a mint in box original 84 Optimus Prime.
Right. And I'll touch on this. I know we're going really long, but which is
I'm
I want to
enjoying
touch.
this. Don't worry about it. Well, let's
Oh,
go
okay,
for
cool.
another hour.
Okay. Yeah.
Well, we can finally get into why that lightsaber was yellow.
What I've learned probably most from your videos and how my attitude and actually in life has changed too because of this. I'm like a all or nothing person. That's just that's just has been my mentality.
I used
I
to be
want
too, yeah.
I want the original thing. I want it to be complete with everything. I don't want any reproduction parts. But as I accidentally ended up getting a reproduction this or that, or I think I bought some things and it turned out they're weapons or reproductions. And in the Star Wars vintage collecting, it's a big no-no. Like reproductions are very frowned upon because, they're not original, and then people will get mixed up, which I can understand. But for my collecting needs, I mean, it's amazing how much some of these dumb little tiny pieces of plastic, like the Leia's blaster, doesn't even resemble Leia's blaster barely, yet people want a ton of money for it, or the capes and stuff
Yeah.
that just get destroyed or lost. I am totally cool now with reproduction stuff, because if I wasn't, I wouldn't have, like you mentioned when you were talking about the Centurion. I think it was the Centurions, right? Some of this stuff, like,
Seabat. Yeah.
right. If you didn't, if you were an all or nothing person, you wouldn't own it at all.
Yeah.
So, and I think, and my wife has gotten on me about being all or nothing, which I do appreciate, actually. So it's, that attitude really just leads to unhappiness,
Yeah.
and it's something I'm constantly in check about. And I do appreciate you bringing it up in those videos, because it's like I said, it's helped me in life in general, and of course in toy collecting. And my wallet thanks you as well.
Thank you. That's the most important part right there. But yeah, I used to also be an all or nothing person, all or nothing, and I started to see a pattern develop. And you can either keep doing what you're doing, and there's a definition that says something about doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results. And I didn't want to be that. So I instead of all or nothing, I decided, best I can with what I have to work with. And I have so many things now that I got, for a great price, affordable price. And I almost celebrate it now when it's missing a part or something. And, I got it for a fraction or much less than what it originally was. It's kind of funny having that mentality and talking to these toy dealers who are still that all or nothing, or prey on people with all or nothing mentalities. They take advantage of those people. Being at a local toy show and a guy saying, it's complete, it's got every single piece. And I'm like, I'm not looking for one complete. What? I'm like, I'm looking for one that's $20, not $80. Huh, good luck, buddy. I'm like, there's a guy selling one for $20. It's missing half its parts. Oh, whatever. If you want missing parts, I do, because I can get the repros for $5 on eBay. Like, oh, but they're not real. Like, this is just hilarious, man. It's just, it's a mental thing where it's kind of like in Harry Potter when people look down at mudbloods. Is that how it's called? You're impure. I'm like, oh my God, are you really doing this? Like, it's a piece of plastic molded to look like a little gun.
Right.
Like, especially with Star Wars weapons, you hold the original and you hold the repro, and like a lot of time I like the repro better because it's newer, it's not chewed on, it's not, you don't have the plastic fraying and peeling off from being put in a hand 1,000 times. It should be about the look and the feel instead of like the idea behind it. Like if you close your eyes and that's what matters to you, like I don't care what they look like. All that's important is I know this is the vintage one and this is the crappy repro. Like, I think you're missing the point. If you're blessed with eyes, open them and just see like $75, $2, or $5. Come on, like I'm doing that any day of the week.
Yeah, and I think it just boils down to life is just too short to be worrying about the minutia of this stuff. I mean, you could be doing so much more for yourself and others than worrying about whether or not the blaster is real versus a reproduction one,
Yeah, we were talking about keep yourself busy. That's not the type of busy you want to keep yourself. That's not going to lead to, being a well-adjusted person. But this has been an awesome chat, man. Again, thank you so much. Soul food for me. Really appreciate taking the time out, and want to tell the viewers about your various music projects. You got the Instagram page.
Right. It's Boss Pedal Project. If you're into music or if you're into pedals, and I combine pedals and toys and stuff sometimes to kind of cross-pollinate a little bit, which I think has helped. And
it is amazing. I used to do nature photos on my Instagram. No one cared. 7 people cared. And I did a lot of them because I'm a real nature lover, and 7 people cared. When I started putting beachcomber and, leatherneck and snake eyes in the shot, a lot more people started to care, and I think it unlocks the magic. I'm not saying like, oh, now you care, you know, because of a toy is in it. I think it adds to it because like these characters were outside in a lot of the great memories we have of them. They were out doing their duty, their stuff, in great outdoors. So you know, I think it's cool to just have that synergy and incorporate them together. Sure, a Yoda, you know, is going to make something seem so much more fun than just like a picture of the thing.
Yeah, it's amazing how if you kind of bring in a whole different niche, you can really, you know, get a lot more interest, and just it's a lot more fun, I think, to me too, just taking the pictures and stuff. And then my band is called Atma Weapon. If you like rock and roll or metal or progressive metal, any of that stuff, and you like video game music or video game references, you'll probably enjoy. Hopefully,
you got a YouTube channel for that too.
I have a YouTube channel. I haven't really posted in a long time. I've sort of just gone to Instagram because it's just I kind of enjoy the exact opposite of what I used to do. A lot of editing. I just like to get it done and not worry about it and kind of move on.
Yeah.
But you can find us on, if you look up Atma Weapon Band, you can find music videos, and I think we're on Spotify, and
cool.
We're out there. So
yeah, I was just about to ask where people can hear some of your tunes. You got a MySpace?
I don't think we ever had one of those, but no, you can look up. We have what's called Bandcamp. It's if you want to support the band or buy a CD or download, and you know, for a small fee, you can just go to our Bandcamp page. I can give you the link, and if you want to post it,
pop it down in the show notes below. Well, good brother, thanks again for taking the time, and hopefully we can chat again. Definitely in one of the roundtables on Patreon coming up. I appreciate you joining one of the previous ones and coming up with a great idea for us to chat about on that one. So,
absolutely, it's been a pleasure talking to you, and Nerdmas Day to you, sir.
Awesome, thank you very much, everyone out there. Thanks for watching. Nerdmas Day.